What up, what up? It's the Athletic Hockey Show for May 7th, 2026. I am Sean Gentili. I am joined by Shayna Goldman, SG1. That's her. No Haley, she's somewhere. No McIndoe, no Max. Whatever. It's a major upgrade because Shayna's smarter than everybody. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for pumping my tires early. Now I'm energized and ready to rip today.
Yes, let's go. We're all psyched. We're not tired at all. The two of us are rolling. Producer Jeff is rolling. Nobody is exhausted. Nobody feels stupid right now. Let's go. Let's just talk about the games last night. The first one, it was Sabres Habs. That's a big start for Buffalo there, isn't it, Shayna? I watched it in a bar in Philly. The Sixers were playing. The Phils were playing. And I went in and was like, yo, can you turn one of these TVs to TNT? And the bartender was like, yeah, TNT? Like, it didn't register that it was even hockey. He thought I wanted to, put on Franklin and Bash or something.
Here's a Charmed rerun.
He was like, yeah, I don't think anyone's watching that one in the corner. We should be all right. So yeah, I made at least some portion of the people in that bar watch Sabres 4, Canadiens 2. What are your initial thoughts come out of that one? Because I know I have some, but when you were watching that one last night, what crossed your mind?
I was curious how the Sabres were going to do in this series because I don't feel like we saw their A game against the Bruins, but they were able to beat them enough with their speed and with their forecheck that you were like, okay, it was a mismatch and we always knew it. But here is a totally different opponent. Here's someone that plays with a lot of speed in the Canadiens. They're also a young team. They're great off the rush. So I think that first period, there was a pretty long sequence of no stoppages. And it was back and forth a bit. And it was like, okay, this is your new series. Like, wake up, everybody. Here we are. And, I'm curious how both teams are going to adapt here because I think the Sabres handled it well. But now it's up to the Canadiens who, again, they're going up against a much faster opponent too. They looked like the younger, speedier team against Tampa Bay. And now you get a totally different opponent in the Sabres. So that was my initial, we're a couple minutes in and it's like, wake up, here we are, it's round 2.
Yeah, this is definitely a rush game. This might be a rush series. I feel like that was the takeaway there. The pace in that first period was nuts. You mentioned how long they went without a stoppage. It was pretty wild. They jumped out 1-0. The Sabres did. It was a goal by Josh Doan, but the whole sequence, we'll talk about him again in a minute, I think. But the whole sequence was kickstarted by Zach Benson. He, Lane Hudson has that turnover along the boards. Pretty rough first period for him. Benson seizes on it and just creates some chaos. Makes a really nice play to Doan, right? So that's I think an extension of the way he played from the first series where he looked like a difference maker. I think did he get it to McLeod and then Doan? It was those guys working well as a unit, and I think that's a carryover from the Lightning series in a positive way. Like, it's good if you're Buffalo to have those guys contributing. You don't have to rely on Tage Thompson. You don't have to rely on the power play, which hasn't been good. That you can get consistent quality chances from that second layer, and that's what good teams do. Is they got guys like Zach Benson and Josh Doan and Ryan McLeod to make actual real measurable differences, and I think we saw that early.
Yeah, and it feels like of all the players on the Sabres, if you were going into the playoffs, you're like, well, who might be a breakout player to watch? And it was Josh Doan and Zach Benson easily. They proved it all regular season long, and then just the play styles of it too. They can play off the rush, they can move the puck really well. Both of them have that top 6 upside, but they also have those skills that you think of in a prototypical third liner. They're great forecheckers. They're so pesky. They pressure for turnovers. Zach Benson's just a total all-around pest. He is thriving in this environment, totally rising to the occasion, and it's such a good sign because, for the Sabres, Tage Thompson's line's going to get those top matchup minutes, right? He's going to see a lot of Suzuki in the series and a lot of Dobson. So Lane Hudson isn't someone easy to just take advantage of, and this isn't even the case of what you would expect, right? Can Lane Hudson make it among men and among these, top? They just got through the Tampa Bay series doing that. It's young players with a lot of speed and in Benson and Doan's case, they play with a lot of like tenacity going up against Hudson. Them going is a great weapon for the Sabres. I was a little worried about them being stacked on the same line going into the playoffs, and it's worked. It hasn't looked imbalanced at all. And if they get someone like Sam Carrick back, they'll have that kind of pesky energy through more combinations, which is a good thing. But to me, it's always listed as the third line. I look at it like that's your second line, and you should play them like it. No, not at all.
Yeah, because Carrick gave them huge minutes down the stretch too, right? Like his absence, it seemed. Sabres fans in my life, they were worried about what they would look like without Sam Carrick, and they haven't. Here they are, right? Like it's
in
other
the year
other
2026
guys. I know. Can imagine that. Like Sam Carrick is the key to all of it, right? But that was not unfounded. There was reason, to believe that they would, really miss something without him in the mix, and that's not the way it's been. I wanted to mention Doan again specifically. Honestly, I mishmashed the first two goals there because he scores the first one, wins a puck battle on the second one to get it to Benson, who ended up hooking up with McLeod, and then on the fourth goal, which was the Bo Byram goal, it was Doan setting a pretty gnarly screen out front. So. This is nothing new. He's been great for them since the jump. We go back to the trade, to the Peterka trade, man. Like it's just so funny that we looked at that and we're like, okay, this is great because Buffalo gets two elements back. They get Kesselring and they get and they get Josh Doan. Kesselring's been, was a non-factor for the most part in the regular season. But it still kind of feels like they won that trade because of how good Josh Doan has been. Like in last night, it's impossible to impact the game as a depth second line, whatever, middle six forward, let's say, in more ways than that. Because he's scoring, he's winning puck battles, he's setting screens. Like that's exactly what you're looking for, right? And I think that was a big takeaway for me last night was what a difference maker he looked like.
Yeah, Josh Doan rocks. One of my favorite players to watch this year.
He's chaotic, man. I love it.
Yeah, he does a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that trade, like Kesselring, you would think would have been more of the centerpiece because they needed a right-handed defenseman, and it just hasn't worked out. He's been injured. He hasn't been as consistent enough. Doan instead is like, when the trade happened, you look and you're like, he could have shades of Brandon Hagel a little bit in there, but he's got to pick up the production, and he's done all that and more. And it's like, that's one of his like stronger comps this year, and it makes a ton of sense. And like, sure, could his career go a different path, but it just feels like he keeps leveling up. And you mentioned on that fourth goal, like the power play, I've been trying to track their entries this whole time because they're so bad.
Because it's been bad.
So bad. You look at that first attempt, I think they attempted to regroup 7 different times and only got in twice with possession. And that next
that's not good.
It's not good at all. And the carry-ins are from that second unit. It's McLeod and Benson the first go. But then you look at that power play there, and Doan gets the entry, carries the puck and right in, which I didn't know you're allowed to do for the Sabres without a million drop passes and these pass entry attempts that aren't working. But he gets in. Him and Benson battle for puck possession. They're great puck retrievers on the power play, and it's exactly why, I don't know, they should be on power play 1. But, they do the little things that you're not seeing enough with the top unit. And Byram takes a shot. They get the face off. They actually win an offensive zone draw, which they haven't been doing a ton, and it sets up that Byram goal. It's all the little things. And then obviously on that play itself, he's screening the goalie. So he's making his impact known all over the ice. I think he's such an X factor in this series. Same with Benson. It just feels like a lot of the time when you hear about these third line guys, it gets overhyped, right? And let's say in theory they're third line guys. You think of the Tampa Bay era and like it's Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman, and they're great players to have. But the reason we're talking about them is like the top 6 is so good, and now you have this next wave on the third line. So it feels like that could be the case here, especially if the top 6 just keeps producing a little bit more, right? Like if they're getting that, or if this eventually just becomes the second line, who's to say? But it'll be that next wave that every single team needs to go on a deep run, and that could be huge in the series because Montreal got those depth contributions in round 1.
Yep. That seems like that's where stuff's going to get decided because like even let's say the top lines play each other to a draw. That's like kind of I don't. That's not really what happened last night because we didn't see a ton of like hard matching, between the Thompson line and the Suzuki line, which I thought was kind of interesting from Lindy Ruff. He talked about it post game. It's in the story that Fairburn and Arpin filed. But it's an interesting approach, right? Because they didn't really hard match anybody there, even though he had the last change. Ruff did. It was a 43% X goal share for the Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky line, which you'll certainly take if you're Buffalo. I think there were no goals scored while they were on the ice in any capacity. I think that's something you accept and say yes, thank you very much. Whenever you have the Josh Doans and Zach Bensons and Ryan McLeods of the world that are looking like difference makers, like you don't need to necessarily get. You'd love it if the power play were clicking. You'd love it if you were finding some way to, win the minutes against Suzuki even more dramatically than you did. But, game one, it wasn't necessary either because you had those guys. You had those guys handling business.
Yeah. And we'll see how that goes for, series shifts back to Montreal. It's like, let's see how that goes, because if that line's going, and we're going to assume the Canadiens do a little more hard matching because that's what they've done through a lot of the year. You're going to assume that Suzuki line is glued to the Tage Thompson line, but could the conversations change by game 3 depending on who's running hot? Who knows?
It's going to be interesting. Yeah, I should watch that. That's something I watch in game 2 is the minutes and who plays against who, because you can bet whenever it goes back to the Bell Center, man, it's going to be 1 against 1 because that's how they rolled, and that's how they won. That's a big part of the reason that they're in this series in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Vegas Ducks game 2 is 3-1 Ducks. That was a score that I don't think was indicative of how much Anaheim dominated that game. Pretty smoked them pretty good in the first period. HD chances or high danger chances were 11-3 after 2, but it was only 1-0, which is funny. They jump out, get a 2-goal lead in the third, and that's from Troy Terry. And then they score an empty netter to make it 3-0. So 3-1, there's an empty netter tacked on, or not an empty netter, a power play goal tacked on by Mark Stone at the end of it. So, the score sheet doesn't look quite as ugly as it did for Vegas when you're actually watching the run of play.
Yeah, I think the Ducks, the fact that they bounced back after the blown power play opportunities, right? Because they have a 5-on-4 opportunity, they get the 5-on-3. Might have been the worst 5-on-3 I've watched in a minute. It was terrible, and it wasn't terrible because Vegas was pressuring them. It was terrible because it felt like the Ducks were just searching for this perfect shot. And right, I think the power play went 8 for 16 in round 1, and then it comes into round 2, and you could just see Vegas pressuring them in shorthanded situations in game 1. So many regroups, very little time established in the zone. It would be a minute 10 in before they're actually in formation, and then it just gets broken right up. So to have this 5-on-3 chance, and Vegas isn't moving much, and the Ducks aren't either. They're looking for the perfect shot, or when they're moving the puck around, they're not shooting immediately. They're waiting, and every time a player is receiving a pass and then just starts looking, it's why didn't you just shoot it there? And then the 5-on-4 it goes back to, and now Vegas is just coming up with these 2-on-1 rushes, and you could have seen this game going right in Vegas's favor in that moment. Vegas has the momentum, they're more battle tested, and it could be deflating for the Ducks for the power play to burn them so much. But I thought that they were so resilient in this and figured it out, and to be scoring at even strength, especially, it's huge in the series. It's going to be more important than 5-on-5 scoring, power play scoring, but to not lose the energy, I thought was such a difference maker.
100%.
You really could have seen it going the other way.
100%. That's especially with a young team too. When you outplay someone so dramatically, but you don't have a multi-goal lead to show for it, I think that can be deflating under certain circumstances. And I think maybe that's a sign. Early, you don't want to read too much into it, but I think that's a sign of growth for them, even from a couple weeks ago. The Edmonton series was won because of the power play, period. They were 8 for 16 in that series or whatever. We're seeing tons of volume, tons of shot volume. We're seeing Cutter Gauthier, playing himself in the right circle, and they're constantly looking for him. He's constantly ready to shoot. For whatever reason, that's not the way it worked last night, So I think the fact that they couldn't just hit the power play button and be like, okay, this is going to bail us out. This is going to make up for whatever issues we're having at 5-on-5. Whether it's finishing or just controlling play, that's not what they did last night. They won a different type of game. And I'm honestly not surprised by it. I thought they were, coming into the series, I think I picked them to win in 7.
Did I.
That might be short-term bias just because I watched them up close for as long as it was against Edmonton. But I don't know, man. There's something there. The pace that they play with is pretty wild. And but again, the fact that they won that game for all the reasons that that's not why I picked them necessarily to win the series in 7 rounds. They're in 7 games, right? Like I didn't expect necessarily any of their wins to go that way. And then the fact that they did is, that's a pretty serious testament to them. Yeah, this feels like it's going to be a long. Also, Lucas Dostal was pretty good. Like he had been sort of whatever against Edmonton. He's 21 saves on 22 attempts. He's got a goal saved above expected of about 1.5. Like that's as good as he's looked. And that is the big surprise for why they got past Edmonton, is that he looked pretty shaky at various points throughout it. Like you kept waiting for him to have a game or two that absolutely killed them, and credit to them, it hasn't happened. And now he looks like maybe he did back in November and in December.
Yeah, going to the series, if you were expecting the Ducks to win, I feel like it would have been like, all right, they're going to win that like 5-4, 5-3 game. Like it's going to be higher scoring. You're going to see them beat Carter Hart a lot because I don't think he's had a great postseason. I think even in game 1, I didn't love how I'm not some goalie expert. Okay, no one understands goalies, but goalies, I get it. Okay, this is my amateur opinion here, but I thought he looked kind of shaky on some of the saves that he made. And if they were pushing him with more second chances and rebounds, I think we would have seen Anaheim score in game 1 and be a little bit more effective. And I didn't love how they were like spacing out in the offensive zone for it, because I didn't think they were putting themselves in good enough positions for it. And then also overpassing prime scoring opportunities. That didn't happen last night. We're seeing them beat Carter Hart with that really great puck movement, and they're moving, cross-seam passes back and forth. And that was on that Terry and Carlson play to score at even strength. But also, it just felt like they had a little bit more control, and it felt like they were just like, okay, time to pour on the offense. Because if you're the Ducks, that's your best weapon, is your offense in the situation. Especially because like Utah had one line going, right? The Cooley line was incredible, and they were beating Vegas with their speed, but it felt like they could have used a little bit more here. If the Carlson line and Terry line is clicking at even strength, and they're winning their minutes against the Theodore pair, and then the Cutter Gauthier line is going to go up against Hannafin and Anderson. And I thought they looked great in that matchup last night. I think head to head, it's like Gauthier versus Hannafin. It's like 14-9 shot attempts for that line. They have a ton of scoring chances. Now, all of a sudden, you're going, okay, there's a good 1-2 punch. Plus, the bottom 6 can disrupt things a little bit. So definitely a good win for Anaheim. Not the way you would have expected to see it. Even pretty solid defensively. Like, again, things you don't expect to see, because usually you watch the Ducks, you go, are you going to outscore your problems? Then let Dostal carry the rest, he can do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not entirely what we saw last night. Like that's a somewhat out of character win in a positive way for them. So we'll see if it's a springboard. We're going to keep watching those series. Obviously, we got another one to talk about. It is a game I will be attending tonight. We'll do that after the break. Also got some big PWHL news. Stay tuned. All right, we're back. Shayna, I'm being told it is night 20 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't know if I thought we were there just yet.
We might not have thought it like consciously, but look at us. I think
it's been like one very long night. It's been a large blob of kind of indistinguishable days and nights. Just one tonight. It's Carolina versus Philly. Again, I am in Philly for this one. Shayna, I'm interested in your take straight off the top. I think conventional wisdom on this is coming into it that it had the potential to be a short one, and I don't know that too much happened in games 1 and 2 that suggested otherwise.
Yeah, it felt like if the Flyers were going to steal on like game 2, they at least looked sharper after a pretty terrible game 1, that you're like, okay, maybe this is possible. Could they steal a game on home ice? Maybe. I think it depends on the injury situation at this point, because it was always going to be lopsided. But then if they're shorthanded on top of it, it's a killer. But there's just too much going wrong. And listen, the goaltending has been pretty solid. Some of their penalty killing has been pretty good, the Flyers. No one wants to score on the power play in this series, and that's okay. And that helps, because Flyers power play is bad on a good day, worse against the Canes. But you need more at even strength. And I think you're seeing what the absence of Owen Tippett's doing. Like, I think that's such a
Absolutely.
huge part. And now the Noah Cates injury, but it feels like if they don't get Tippett back, they are truly cooked in four.
I tend to agree with you there. And I'm heading to skate after this. We'll see what comes out of that. I would imagine we're not going to have a straight answer for Tippett. I would guess that's going to be a game time decision, but it sounds like, maybe he has a chance. He's seemed like he's trending upward a bit over the last couple of days. I mean, he's a game breaker. We saw especially early against Pittsburgh, we saw what he can bring when he's right. He's got that skating burst. There's moments where, like, if you were someone who was just watching hockey for the first time, if you were like, I want to be a hockey fan, and what game's on, and it's the Philadelphia Flyers, there's points in every game where you watch Owen Tippett, and you're like, this is the best hockey player on earth. Like,
Yep.
he pops in that way, right? And he did against Pittsburgh. I think he's got that kind of game-breaking ability that's, that you kind of need to break the wall, that the Hurricanes put up sometimes, and I think they've missed that pretty dramatically. Cates is hurt. Me and Kurz were trying to figure out when it happened. Kurz thinks it might have happened on a block shot, but it sort of came out of nowhere that he's, almost certainly done for this series. Definitely not going to play tonight. That's a big loss, man. He's quality minutes. His defensive work is pretty underrated, I would say, just generally. And he's another player archetype that I think you need to succeed against the Carolina Hurricanes. You need someone out there who can kind of play their style, especially on the bottom six there. And he's not around either. So yeah, that's a big deal. The bigger issue for me, I think, I've been kind of beating this drum in one way or another. Porter Martone looks gassed, and it's fine. Yeah. He's allowed to be. He's played more hockey this season than he ever has before. He had to adjust to the NHL. There's reasons for Porter Martone to be tired and not producing in the way that we saw from him, but I think it underscores how important his production was to them down the stretch and early in that series against Pittsburgh. Having a guy like that in the lineup completely changes the way everything else works and the way everything else hangs together, because we knew that they could lock teams down defensively, and we knew they could drag them into the mud. Having a dude that, with the shot volume that he was at down the stretch and also the finishing ability, man, that was a game changer for them. And now with him operating clearly at less than 100%, whether it's exhaustion or whatever, they're looking a little bit more like the Philadelphia Flyers from, February and March. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. It's wild. Like, his NHL experience is it's like the rookie experience on speed. Like, he comes in hot, he gets all the momentum. Here's big minutes, but now he's hit his rookie wall. And like you said, like, he's played a ton of hockey this year, so that's a huge adjustment for him. Plus, playing against the Canes, there's so much more wear and tear on opponents than there is against playing the Penguins. So that's tough too. And then there's some injuries because he didn't play a ton with Tippett and it hasn't played a ton with Cates, but when they were on the ice together, like, he looked pretty good in their shared time so far this postseason. Like, this is a guy who he was excelling because he plays such a poised game, but he also just shoots the puck a ton. He has a really dangerous shot. Yep. And if his scoring chance creation's down for any reason, he's not going to be nearly as effective. And against the Canes now, you're going to be getting tougher matchups, tougher defending to go head to head against. They're going to swarm and just have pressure.
They're gonna cut back on the volume, whether you're right or not. And that was a big part of what made him successful. Like, I still, a stat that sticks with me going into the playoffs. It had only been 9 games or 10 games for him, but just in terms of individual shot generation, he was doing over the course of the full season. If he did for 82 games what he did for those 9 games, he would have been third in the league in terms of individual shots per 60. Like, it would have been Brady. And it would have been Cutter Gauthier, and then it would have been Porter Martone. That is wild. And and again, just having any kind of offensive, generation, I think down the stretch was huge for them. And they're not getting that on the same level. And, they look worse for it. On the Carolina end of things, they shook up their lines at the end of game 2, which was wild because it doesn't happen all that often, and it worked out immediately. Seth Jarvis scores, on a pretty sick feed from Ehlers on their first shift together. I don't know that they're going to stick with that. I think the vibe is that they're maybe going to go back and have Jarvis back with Aho and Svechnikov, which is kind of interesting. That's definitely something to watch. Something to watch early. But Shay, what have you what are your thoughts from? I know you watched that game too. You were watching all of it. What's the vibe you got from those combinations before the switch happened?
Well, I think Ehlers being on the third line is like it has its pluses and minuses, right? Because on the plus side, he's adding that rush based ability alongside Stahl and Martin that don't have foot speed really at this point, and they don't play that style anyway. And it works together really well. And I think against Ottawa, the fact that their third line was giving them so many chances in transition, especially when the Senators did a pretty good job breaking up their forecheck at times, so you needed to be able to beat them different ways. Huge weapon to have. You put Jarvis there, and now it's like, okay, that's a lot of rush-based strength that the Canes have on one line, but maybe it's a good thing to get Jarvis going because I don't think he had a great round one. It wasn't so much like, oh, it's the entire line. Like when you would watch Aho, Svechnikov, and Jarvis play together, you're like, is Jarvis okay? Like the passing isn't as crisp, it's not as effective. So I think that could get him back on track here. I would be curious if that's just like that like a game to refresh him and then jump back on the top line and see what happens. But if not, the Canes know they have this bonus combination in their back pocket that they could always lean on. And Svech is good at moving the puck that you could go, okay, he's become such a good passer too. You have someone like Martinook who can just get to the front end of the net and be a pain. Like maybe it could work if they need it to, but I think I'd be more curious to see if like the adjustments gets everyone going and then you go back and see what they bring back to their like original combos.
I think that's the argument for it, right? Is that you do get Jarvis going. He looked like the weight of the world came off his shoulders post game. Like he was refreshed and rejuvenated and all those cliches that you hear about someone after they score a goal, but that was him. He looked like a new man, right? So yeah, maybe that's the thought, is that you'd bring that energy back to the Aho fetch line and things take off from there. But it's going to be interesting because they need that, God bless Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake and Taylor Hall, but like they're not going to be able to do it themselves every single game. Like you're going to need quality minutes and quality, true point production from the Aho line, regardless of who gets it. I think it needs to come. They can't just be playing teams to draws game after game. Like that's nice, but that's not a recipe for winning 16 games in the playoffs.
No, and not in this division, at this conference, right? Like you get through the Metro doing it, it's one thing. Senators, Flyers, that's two defensive powerhouses. Can you do that against whoever comes out of the Atlantic? I don't know.
Well, we're about to find out. Again, game 3 tonight in Philly. We wanted to touch on some PW expansion. PWHL announced yesterday in Detroit that team number 9 is officially in place. It was a pretty badly kept secret over the last however many days, but they do have the announcement. The Illich family is a partner. That's good. The scheduling issue solved. That was kind of a hurdle for figuring out, how a team in Detroit was going to look. There's going to be a lot of double headers with the Wings, which I think is pretty cool. That's something that worked for them during the PWHL takeover tour. It's ridiculous that there's not another viable spot for that team to play because there's no women's team at the University of Michigan, which is a whole other story, but it's something worth noting. And there's going to be 3 more probably, Shayna. I think that's a fair conclusion to draw. We know from some documents that Haley Salvian got her hands on that the PW could expand by 4 total for the upcoming season. It seems like this is based on Haley's reporting. It's in a story on the site. San Jose and Hamilton are the leaders to get 2 of those other 3 teams that are up for grabs. I'm wondering what your vibe is on both of those spots. I think the Bay Area personally is fun, and I'm wondering if you agree.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I feel like San Jose's done a good job of like maximizing their teams in the area. You have the Barracuda, you have the Sharks, you have a lot of energy, and it's such an exciting time in San Jose for hockey in general. So just
we saw their attendance skyrocket this season. Like it had been down. Obviously, that team stunk, but I think they realize what they have in Macklin Celebrini. Just like the support for them during the Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau glory years was wild, right? Like that building was loud and rocking every single night. So I think there's proof of concept there, just generally that building will be full of hockey fans as long as the product's decent.
Yeah, I feel like it's just like such a great area for sports. I feel like that
Oh man, absolutely.
you have the West Coast balance idea because that'll help ease travel for teams like Vancouver and Seattle. It's like a natural rivalry. Honestly, you look at like soccer and
Mm-hmm.
sports like that, like those three teams are always going head to head. Um, I think that's just such a fun idea. Hamilton's maybe the most fascinating because I do
Yeah,
think there's value to seeing how this works in a city without an NHL team. And in the US, I would say maybe Wisconsin's your move. But then you're competing against college teams, and I get like not wanting to do that just yet. So if you're gonna try it, you try it in Canada. And Hamilton or Halifax, both probably are the moves there.
yep,
Like one or the other, I should say. So Hamilton, it clicks. It's such, passionate hockey cities that would be excited. It feels like that is a really great test market.
totally. Yeah, because I think the Scepters have seen that they draw fans from way way deep into the horseshoe there. So I think it would make sense if the league looked at that and said, all right, well, if there's people coming this far that are interested in Scepters games, maybe they're probably closer to Hamilton in the first place, right? And then B, Hamilton itself is a great hockey city, and then C, you know, there is potential to drop people up from Buffalo. That'll or whatever the Niagara Falls area. Like there's an untapped resource to the south there too. So I think Hamilton, does that mean people in Washington and in Pittsburgh and more traditional sports markets are gonna be pissed? Yeah, I get it, but there's also something to be said for it for sure, and it's gonna be interesting. It does seem like the league said it might be two, it might be three, it might be four, but I think
Who's to say? Not even us.
there's reasons to connect the dots and think it's going to be four. It's going to be interesting. 12-team P Dub next year. Good God.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, like you said, Pittsburgh makes sense. Washington makes sense. You can make Denver make sense. There's
Mm-hmm.
all these places. We heard Chicago a lot, but it feels like Detroit's going to cover that. General vicinity and probably for the best, better arena situation. But it'll be good too because look, like you mentioned, the whole idea of like Buffalo fans in that Niagara area. Like you don't want to root for Toronto. I'm sure if you're
No,
Buffalo, like
no way.
there's that weird you always think about it like when we see it with like relocation and
Mm-hmm.
things like that in the NHL or in other sports. Like, how do you now go to your nearest division rival who you hate for every other sports city? So the more cities, the better. I'm going to be curious how people root for Detroit. Like, is it going to only be Detroit fans? Like, if you're a
I
Chicago fan
know.
right now, who are you rooting for? You probably hate Minnesota. You probably hate Detroit. Like, who would you
Yeah.
rather pick? So add these untraditional non-NHL cities. I feel like that could open the door to like different fandom too. Like everyone's like, you know what? We love Hamilton. This is our vibe.
Seriously, if you're unaffiliated and you're like, let's go with the Hamilton blah blahs. Let's go. All right, Peter Baugh's next. He's here to talk Avs Wild, and he is coming up after the break. Stick around. All right, we're back. We're joined by Pete Baugh. He's wearing his Colorado Avalanche beat writer hat again. Peter, hello. How are we?
I am doing well. I'm out here in Denver. It's a little early, but that's all good, and I'm pumped to be traveling for the start of the series. It's been really fun so far.
Absolutely.
What was the last series you covered for the Avs? Like how which year was it?
So, well, before Avs Kings, it would have been 2023 Kraken Avs 7-game series. Overturned goal in game 7 in the third period that would have tied it for the Avs, and then the Kraken win, go on and take the Stars to 7 games in the next round.
Back when the Kraken were kind of relevant. What a time to be alive. All right, so in this series so far, the one you're watching this year, it's Avs Wild, obviously. On Minnesota's end, goaltending's been an issue. We talked about it a bit on the Wednesday show. You guys have written about it in a couple of different capacities. You and Russo and Joe. It's Jesper Wallstedt was in for game 1, lets in 9. Gustafsson has a dud in game 2. On your end, how much of that has been due to the Avs? Are they making those guys look worse? Is it wrong place, wrong time? Combo of the two. What are you seeing on the Colorado end of the Wild's goaltending problems?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of the two, right? Like the Wild, their goalies have not played well. The Avs are also creating very dangerous chances. I think you can look back at at last game as an example. I'm not a goalie expert. Like Jesse Granger would be better at saying like what the goalie should have done in specific spots, who's at fault on which play. But the first goal is Nathan McKinnon and Martin Necas doing crazy things where they're cutting into the offensive zone at 100 miles an hour, and Necas backhands a shot through traffic that Gustafsson probably doesn't see. The second goal is a tic-tac-toe power play goal that was going to be hard on any goalie. The third goal, though, is one that you would think he probably should have had. His angle wasn't great. And against the Avs, where the Wild probably have a pretty low margin for error because of the injuries to Jonas Brodin and Joel Eriksson Ek, as well as the fact that the Avs are probably just the more complete roster at this point. Like, you really need to be getting the saves the goalies should make. They can't be giving you their C game. They need to be giving you their B+ or A game. And so far that hasn't been the case this series.
So Wild obviously are dealing with key injuries, no Eriksson Ek, no Brodin, but feels like the Brodin one's opening the door to some problems for Minnesota. It means Middleton's up in the top four with Spurgeon. There's a Petrie Bogosian third pair. Like, how much of a problem do you think those bottom four defensemen are for Minnesota so far?
It's been a huge issue. And I wrote about it the other day. It also has a trickle-down effect of Quinn Hughes, Brock Faber are now playing so many more minutes than Cale Makar and Devon Taves. So Makar and Taves are a little bit fresher every time they take the ice because they haven't played as much this series. And you're seeing the Avs are kind of taking advantage of the amount Quinn is playing, not in the, I mean, he's obviously amazing and they're not doing as well when he's on the ice, but they're hitting him a lot. Like he's kind of, he's put some, there's been a lot of miles that he's had to drive this series already. And the type of he's having to take more defensive zone starts because they aren't trusting Middleton and Spurgeon, which is really the pair. That second pair is really the pair that they need to be able to trust, but they haven't trusted Middleton and Spurgeon. So Hughes and Faber are starting more in the defensive zone than they would otherwise, which means they're not playing in the situations where, like, you want Quinn Hughes starting in the offensive zone, creating offense, doing what he does best, but they're having him to rely on him for everything. And I think it's a major storyline in this series. And the Eriksson Ek injury is massive too. I mean, this is a series where the Avs already had the edge in terms of center depth because they can go McKinnon, Nelson, Kadri, Drury. They can move Nick Waugh over if they needed. And now the Wild are down not only their top offensive center, or one of their top offensive centers, but a defensively really sound player. And when you're down your best defensive forward and best defensive defenseman, it's a bad recipe against that.
Yeah, I think that kind of dovetails into my next question. We know Matt Boldy's a difference maker. Dallas certainly knows that he's a difference maker. He's got 1 assist in this series, so this is Colorado holding him in check. How does that work for them? What have you seen on that end of things? Why are they limiting the work he's doing so effectively?
This was Boldy specifically?
Boldy, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe Smith just wrote about this today, and I think some of it is Jared Bednar talked about this. If he was like, well, they're down Joel Eriksson Ek. Like, that hurts their forward group, that hurt in terms of offensive production. So someone like Matt Boldy is not playing with the center that he normally would be playing with. I think that they've played Boldy pretty tight. I think that he also maybe has just not been as sharp as he normally is. And I think that could be from pressing. That could be because it's a 2-game sample size. Matt Boldy's going to get his looks. Like, I have no doubt that back in Minnesota, he's going to get some chances and be able to do some things and make life a little difficult on the Avalanche at points. But you're right. Like, they've played him physical. They've played him tight. And I think that it's going to be if Minnesota is going to win this series, they're going to need the Boldys, the Kaprizovs. They're going to need those guys to be really special. And we'll see if they can turn it around in Minnesota. But right now, the Avalanche game 1 was a total, like, crazy, chaotic, like, so many goals everywhere. But in game 2, I thought that those guys were held in check for the most part. And The Wild power play hasn't been able to score all that much, though it did have a really good looking first power play of last game.
You mentioned the power play. That's a problem for the Avs. Somehow, 2 seasons of issues, 2 different coaches, different personnel. It's clicking now. Do you think it's just a really short-handed penalty kill that already, like, at full strength, that penalty kill was struggling against Dallas. Here it is, now you're without Brodin. How much of it do you think is the Wild's penalty kill just not being where it needs to be, or the Avs have finally figured it out on the power play?
I think it's a mix of the two. They had kind of started to figure out the power play in the latter half of the regular season. After the Olympic break, if you look, their numbers were a lot better, and they were certainly not at the top of the league, but if you sort it from the Olympic break on, it was probably more middle tier, and I think they had a really good start after the Olympic break, and then Kadri got hurt and it maybe went down again. Against the Kings, it was so-so. I didn't think it was great, but they had some looks, and they finally scored in Game 4. So I think it was generally trending in the right direction entering this series. And then when you're facing a shorthanded penalty kill that was already struggling, it makes things a lot easier. I mean, that power play looked really dangerous in Game 2. It scored twice. It had some other really good looks, and then I thought the 5th power play that they got, they kind of were being a little cautious because it was so late in the game and they were up 3 goals and didn't want to get too cute with anything. So I wrote going into the series, like 5-on-5, this was going to be a really tough series for the Wild. But the power play and like winning the special teams battle was going to be massive because of it. And so far, Colorado has dominated in both regards. The Wild do have a shorthanded goal, but the Avs have, I think, 3 power play goals plus another one that happened right after the time expired, and then they haven't allowed the Wild much on the penalty kill.
We need to talk about Scott Wedgewood. He's a guy you wrote about today. Great story, of course, up on the site. 6-0 with a .923 save percentage in the playoffs thus far. What is it about him that's working for the Avs? Because he's a guy who we saw split time with Mackenzie Blackwood to some degree, but he's been really, really solid for them really throughout the year.
Yeah, doing that story was interesting because you don't see, this is his first, he's 33 years old, and this is the first season in his career where he started more than half of his team's games. And he leads the league in save percent. He led the league in save percentage in the regular season. His underlying numbers were pretty good. Obviously, he benefited a lot from playing behind a great defensive team, and a team that was going to win him some games. But he's been someone, I didn't use this in the story, but Alex Nedeljkovic who's close friends with Scott Wedgewood. He mentioned in the story that he's like, it's not just that the Avs are so awesome in front of him and he isn't holding his own. He makes a few big saves every game that kind of keeps them in games sometimes, and then they can take off and win games 4-1, 5-1. And I think this series in particular, the bounce back from Game 1 was really impressive because he wasn't very good in Game 1. And then in Game 2, I thought he was really solid, and I thought it was clearly it was the right decision by Bednar to stick with him rather than doing what Minnesota did and switching goalies. And Blackwood is ready, and I would guess at some point he will play during this playoff run. But Bednar stuck with Wedgewood, and Wedgewood kind of rewarded his trust and was really steady, calm, and had I thought a really solid game too. The Wild generated some chances as that game went, and he kind of always kept them arm's length away from being able to really get back into the game.
It'll be interesting, man. And he's another reason to watch. People thought that it's funny. It looked like Blackwood was the long-term kind of permanent answer there for stretches since they acquired from San Jose. And then, it's not quite the way it's worked out. You got a great story. And man, I remember when he was in junior, he had some kind of crazy 70 save game. I remember, and I that was the first time I ever heard his name, and it was 15 years ago. And it's been funny to watch him kick around and have kind of a star turn now. It's cool stuff. It's what the playoffs are about.
It is cool. And Blackwood, like, to his credit, it's not like Blackwood's been bad. Like he's been what the Avs paid to acquire him. He's been worth Alexander Georgiev and a second round pick or third round pick or whatever it was. Like he had a .904 save percentage this year in a year where the save percentages were low. So
896 or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been an above average goalie, and I don't know. I still kind of wonder if I think the Avs in the regular season next year are going to be content again to just let them split time because they're both solid enough. But yeah, it's been a big difference going from watching New York Rangers hockey mostly to watching the Avalanche.
So you're gonna get the
different
bends,
leagues.
You're gonna get the bends from surfacing up like that quickly, brother.
Yeah.
All right, man. Enjoy the next couple of days. You got a 3-day break. That series resumes on Saturday back in Mini. Enjoy, travel safe, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon at some point.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
So thank you, Pete. Thank you, Shayna. Thank you, fine folks, for listening to the Athletic Hockey Show. The Prospect Series is back tomorrow. Enjoy the game tonight. Again, it's just one. It's Carolina-Philly. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you again real soon.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.